Word. Well, hello everybody. Can you just move the camera slightly so I can see the students? Is that okay? Tilt it. That's great. So I'll just give everybody a wave first. Hello everybody. That's wonderful. And you all look very smart as well. It's slightly dark, but I can see you look really very smart. So it's lovely to be in your school this morning in the UK. It's 8 o'clock this morning here. What time is it over there?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock? Okay, well look, there's a special treat. You can all go home now, okay? Okay, go home now. Well, I'm an explorer. That's what I do for a living. So I go around places on the planet, mainly cold places, and I basically do long-range expeditions in places like the Arctic, Antarctica, to the North Pole, South Pole. I've worked in Alaska, Norway, and also extensively in the Himalayas as well. And last year I found myself heading up Mount Everest, the highest mountain on the planet itself. And what I do is when I go to these wonderful places, I connect with schools like I'm doing now. So I'll stand on the side of Mount Everest, or I'll stand at the North Pole, and I directly connect with students in classrooms around the world to talk about who I am, to talk about the environment I'm walking through, and also about, I suppose, just thinking differently about life, how you can enjoy life. And you've got that all to come because you're very young. You've got a wonderful life ahead of you. And it's a beautiful planet. And that's what I try and push out to people, that this is a wonderful planet we live on. It's a beautiful room you're in there. Is that the library, is it?
Yes!
Ah, fantastic. And I can see the ceiling with all the banners up there. It's a beautiful room. This year I did something very different from usual. I worked in a warm place. So I decided to take the schools programme into New Zealand. And I went over to New Zealand and I cycled from the very tip of the top of New Zealand to the very bottom. And I can show you actually, this is my wheel of my bike. I told you about New Zealand, about crossing New Zealand, but a few years ago I did the cycle ride right across America. So I went from a place called Seattle to New York, which is a distance in kilometres about just 6,000 kilometres across America. On both trips I connected with schools, so very different. And then when I got back from New Zealand this year, I went to Norway and trained for my next expedition, which is to the North Pole next year, from Canada. Very few people have walked on that section because it's the ice is so unstable.
How many penguins didn't come in the South Pole?
Is your name Tristan, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's nice to meet you. How many penguins did I see? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think Tristan asked the question about penguins. This here is a statue of penguin that I have on my desk. I didn't see any penguins in Antarctica because when I did my expedition I headed inland and the penguins were all on the outside of the coast. So for 50 days, when I did my solo journey to the South Pole, I didn't see any animals or any people or anything at all. I was completely alone. I'll just show you this first, if that's okay. There's a picture here of can anybody guess what this is? This is a polar bear tooth.
Oh my gosh, it's so big. Do you have to deal with ice caps?
Do you have to deal with ice caps?
Deal with them? Yeah, I've crossed them quite a few times. on the Arctic Ocean, especially when you cross them, you feel like you're on a sea itself. And sometimes when you camp your tent at night, you actually drift maybe 1 or 2 k's back on the route that you've come on. So they are very, very, you can feel that you're on the ice cap. It's very, very sort of strange thing to go on. Yeah.
How did you get to the North Pole?
How did I get to the North Pole? Well, I skied. So I used skis, I pulled a sledge, and I got helicoptered in from a Russian helicopter, and I was dropped off in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, and the helicopter disappeared, I was left alone, and I walked to the North Pole, and I was picked up just over the other side of the North Pole itself. The Russians told me a polar bear was following my tracks. A polar bear and the cubs were following my tracks, so a very dangerous situation to be in. And luckily I was helicoptered out at the right time.
Polar bear and its cubs following him.
How cold is the North Pole? Okay. Well, if you want to sit down, we'll all do an experiment, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people ask me how cold it is in the North Pole compared to the South Pole. North Pole on top of the world, South Pole on the bottom of the world. So we're going to do a little experiment. Is everybody okay with this?
Yeah.
Good answer, that's the correct answer. So, in the South Pole, it's the biggest deserts on the planet. So it's very, very dry. So if you, and in the North Pole, because it's on an ocean, it's very, very wet. So, let's go back to Antarctica. If you get the back of your hand, everybody hold the hand up, and if you blow on the back of your hand, show the wind in the South Pole. Blow on the back of your hand, and then lick the back of your hand, and blow again quickly. See how cold it is? And that's different. As soon as you add wet to it, and the wind blows on it, it gets tremendously cold. How old am I? Eh? How do I get at you? How do I get at you? How old am I? Well, I'm not going to say how old you think I am because it's always embarrassing. Because you'll probably say 70 or 80 or something. I'm 47 years old. Wow. 40, I gave my job in as a firefighter. So I began my life as a soldier. I then became a firefighter, and now I do exploration. So I've done quite a few varied things in this very short life I've had so far. Still got my looks. Very handsome, elegant man. How did I keep clean? That's a good question. I love that question. Well, you know, we don't really wash on expedition. So for 50 days in Antarctica, I didn't wash. And I didn't change my clothes either. The only good thing about that is your nostrils. These things here, your nostrils, they freeze up at minus temperatures. So you can't smell too well, which is good news. And for my next expedition next year, I'm in training already. I'm not washing at all. That was a joke. Oh, well, you can have a snow bath. Has anybody heard of a snow bath?
Yeah.
What you do is you go into the freezing snow, you kneel in the snow, and you then get the snow, take your top off, you get the snow, and you rub it all over you. And it generally keeps you clean. It's tremendously, and when you put your clothes back on, you're nice and snug and warm. But that's the only way we can keep fresh.
How thick is the ice that you walk on?
How thick is it? What's your name?
Eloise.
Eloise. Eloise, can you see the camera? Huh? Can you see the camera, yeah?
Yeah.
You go up to the camera and just give me a high five on the camera. You ready? All the way from England. Go up to the camera, put your hand on the camera. Ready? At the top.
Yeah.
There you go, high five. All the way from England, high five. The first high five all that distance away. So the thickness of the ice, well, the thickness of the ice can be 6, 7, 10 meters thick, so very, very thick ice, or it can be paper thin ice, as thin as this card here, this paper. And sometimes what happens is the snow will come down and settle on the top of the paper thin ice. And underneath the ice is the ocean, the Arctic Ocean. So when you stand on it, you'll think you're standing on solid ice, but you're not, and it can crack. And you can actually put your foot in the ocean. So it's a very dangerous place to actually travel through. But the majority of the ice is very, very thick. But of course it moves as well, because it's an ocean. So it drifts as you go along. It's like being in a fun house at the circus. You never know what's going to happen. The environment changes around you. It's a beautiful place to travel through.
How cold is it in the Arctic and Antarctica?
How cold is it? Okay, so I gave you an idea about temperature with blowing of the hand, yeah? But to give you a better idea, shall I? When you expose your hand to minus temperatures, when you put your hand in the freezer that we operate in, your hand starts to die. So the blood vessels start to close up. The blood stops flowing around the body itself. In the extremities, to begin with. And the extremities are the furthest point from your body. So your fingers and your toes, and in my case, my big nose as well. So those are the areas start to freeze to begin with. And your body starts to close down. So the key to survival in the Arctic is to move slowly, to keep warm, keep your body warm, eat properly, and so you're constantly looking after yourself all the time. Shall I tell you what the biggest killer is in the Arctic? Okay. Some people think it's polar bears, but it's not. It's actually sweat. You know, when you're playing sports and you sweat, well, that's liquid coming out your body. And if you're working in minus temperatures, that liquid will turn to ice. And if it freezes around here, where your heart and your lungs and everything that keeps you alive is here, if that freezes, then your body again starts to die. So the biggest killer is sweat. Hello.
What things do you take with you to survive?
What did I take with me to survive?
Yeah.
Well, I took the basics of survival, which is a tent, so shelter. I took food, which was dehydrated food, so like you add water and it expands. And I also took, I took fuel with me. So a fuel to put in my cooker, and then I take the snow, put it in the pot, melt the snow, and then I boil up liquid to put into hot chocolates and teas and things like that. You can't drink cold water because it starts to cool the inside of your body, and you don't carry liquid with you. You melt all the snow around you. So that's the basics of the survival. One of the most important things I took with me, though, was a satellite phone, so I could then call in for rescue if I had any big problems.
Is there sun at the poles?
There's sun at the poles.
Oh, I'll tell you what, that's a great question. Now, when I go to the North Pole next year, in February, they'll just be coming out of their winter. So it's dark for 24 hours. Yeah? You get some light coming through, so it's not pitch black. So you do see where you're going. And about the 18th of March next year, or each year, about that time, summer solstice kicks in. So the light starts coming back in again. But what happens is, and this is the fantastic thing, is the sun doesn't set and rise in the east and the west. The sun rotates around you. So it's constantly light, and it gets slightly dusk, if you like, then it's still always light as it travels around you. So it's an amazing place to be. In Antarctica, for 50 days, I didn't have any darkness at all. It was completely light as I was traveling through. Good.
How many animals have you seen in the poles?
That's a good question. How many animals? Well, in Antarctica, I didn't really see any. I saw one bird during that 50-day period, and that was really towards the end, and that was tremendously exciting, just to see a bird in the sky. In the north, I've seen loads of animals, and maybe you can have a look at these later when we finish this tour. Everything from polar bears to muskox, which are like buffalo, to seals. We've also seen caribou, which is a deer. And the smallest animal I've ever seen is a lemming, a little white lemming, which is like a little mouse. And I was walking through this white void of the Arctic, and suddenly this lump of snow jumped up and scurried across in front of me. And I looked twice at it, and there's a little rodent with snow on his back. And he ran in front of me. And he came right up to our feet and said hello. Mount Everest. Well, I spent 75 days. I spent 75 days on the mountain, and just the thing about Mount Everest, when you head above 7,500 meters, they call it the death zone. So the air at that level, so it's about 1.5 miles above the clouds. So when you go out of your school and look up in the sky, see the clouds, and imagine me standing 1.5 miles above those cloud level. But the oxygen that we breathe in every day is very, very thin. So you find it very difficult to breathe. And that's why they call it the death zone. And the blood in your body that moves around your body moves around very slowly. It's like thick soup. So the oxygen doesn't get to the vital areas of your body. So it's very dangerous to walk through. And it was a beautiful mountain. Standing way above the clouds, looking down on the clouds is an amazing thing to see. A beautiful place to planet. Would you want to climb Everest one day?
How do you protect yourself from the weather?
How do I protect myself? Well, I wear very high-tech. I wear very high-tech clothing. I wear big, fat, thick down jackets. And in fact, okay, so we'll do a little thing on the down jacket. The down jacket is a very thick jacket, and inside you've got feathers in there. And the air circulates around the feathers, and it keeps you warm, okay? Just the same as a polar bear. Do you know what colour a polar bear is?
Yes! It's kind of
Okay, you stick your hands up and tell me what colour a polar bear is. So if the teachers would like to pick out a couple of the students to give a colour.
Stasia.
They wear white coats.
Okay, white is one colour. I'm looking for a couple more.
What other colour do they change into? You guys know that. They change, don't they, when they camouflage? Ethan.
Brown.
Good boy.
Okay, brown's a good colour. Polar bears aren't generally looking brown, but if you shave a polar bear, don't shave a polar bear. Shave a polar bear, the skin underneath is brown, and the nose is brown, and the paws are brown. So that's what I was looking for. Another one was cream. A lot of people say cream, but the actual hair. So if you pluck the hair of a polar bear and put it underneath a microscope, it's transparent, so you can see straight through the hair. And inside that hair is a little hole. And what happens is, these hairs all over the body, millions of them, they trap air inside the hair itself. And that's what keeps the polar bear, well, one of the things that keeps the polar bear just like the down jacket that I mentioned.
When did you decide to become an explorer?
That's a good question to end on, isn't it? You know, I've been on 30 major expeditions around the planet, and I've also been on a lot of adventures. You know, when I was your age, how old are the students there?
7.
Oh, okay. Well, when I was 7 years old, I remember my parents asking me to go down my local shops, and it's the first time that I was alone when I went out the house. And I remember how excited I was about turning each corner and being on my own. And I think the feeling of excitement and the butterflies in my stomach at the time is the same feeling I have today when I step foot on Mount Everest or at the North Pole. It's a real sense of excitement and adventure. So I think I've had it in me all my life. And hopefully your school will follow me on my next journey to the North Pole and future journeys in years to come. But I've really enjoyed the questions today. So thank you very, very much for inviting me into your school.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thanks so much for bearing with our technical difficulties out here in Phuket. But it's been really great listening to you, and I know you've really inspired the children, so thank you.
So thank you guys.
That's so kind, and have a really good rest of the day, and I hope we can connect again in the future.
Bye, Machine Gun Library. Can't wait to get in here. Thank you.
Have a good stand by. Polar bear. Okay, just 1 second, because I'll put this on the website. Okay, so if I want the teacher, if you can shout out what school it is, and I'll have a quick chat with you. So I'll film the section.
It's down on your knees. You can get more people in.
So what school am I speaking to?
British International School Phuket.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Take care. I'll speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.